What happens when Michael Jordan, at the height of his powers, faces not one, not two, but three Hall of Famers trying to take him down? On January 11th, 1997, Charles Barkley, Hakeem Olajuwon, and Clyde Drexler teamed up in a hyped Rockets super team showdown, thinking maybe, just maybe, this was the night they'd humble the Bulls. But instead, Michael Jordan stepped into the United Center and said, "Nah, I'm still the boss." That night, there was much more at stake than a regular season game. As the important dates of the season approached, games between great teams served to send a message. If we meet in the playoffs, you're gonna bite the dust. The Rockets had become one of the best teams of the decade, dominant on both sides of the court. And on that January night, they wanted to prove it against the player many fans called GOAT. During Michael Jordan's retirement for a season and a half, the Rockets became the owners of the NBA. There was no other team as dominant as them, but with Jordan back, they decided to bring in reinforcements. The most important was Charles Barkley, a player who was not only a paint beast capable of dominating games night after night, but also a one-time NBA MVP. In August 1996, the Suns decided to start a new era, sending Barkley to the Houston Rockets in exchange for a big haul in return. And Rudy Tomjanovich thought, yeah, this is it. But the most incredible thing is that without him, the Rockets were already one of the best teams in the NBA. Hakeem Olajuwon had just completed one of the best individual seasons in league history a couple of years earlier, winning the MVP, DPOY, and the 1994 championship, all during the same season. And man, Clyde Drexler, a player who at times in his career had been compared to Mike, was the perfect Robin for one of the best centers in history. Plus, with Jordan fresh out of retirement, they were able to repeat the feat the following season, winning back-to-back chips. The Rockets players wanted only one thing, one goal, to win a third consecutive ring to match the Bulls' three-peat. So Jordan, aware of this, knew that his legacy was at stake. If the Rockets won that season, Chicago's three-peat would be forgotten in basketball history. Because recency bias is inherent in human nature. They were already out of fashion. They would be part of the past. Michael knew he couldn't lose that game. Until finally, the day arrived. It was a cold night on January 11th, 1997. All NBA fans had been talking all day about the game that was about to be played. Because the two-time champs, the Houston Rockets, were about to face the three-time champs, the Chicago Bulls, at the United Center. The winning team would send a message to the entire league, and indirectly, it would also become the team to beat. This time, Jordan wasn't alone. At his side was Scottie Pippen, a player who had evolved even more in his absence. But he also had Dennis Rodman, a player who started out as his nemesis, but ended up becoming one of the players who protected him the most on the hardwood. When the three of them were on the court together, they were a very dangerous team. Pippen proved this in the first play of the game with a hard put-back dunk. Jordan's improvement as a playmaker since his return could not go unnoticed either. He was able to drive to make the right decision, as in this play, where he finds Bill Wennington wide open, who's able to knock down the 15-footer. However, those Rockets had a lot of punch. Not even one of the best defenders in the league, Dennis Rodman, was able to stop Barkley in a low post. The Rockets really had enormous superiority in the paint, because look, right after that, Hakeem Olajuwon got started in the box score with a hook shot also from the right low block. Hakeem was a post-up powerhouse, capable of scoring from there on every trip. His resources were limitless. His touch was as precise as a sniper's, and Michael had to respond immediately if he didn't want the game to slip away from him early. Just like Charles, just like Hakeem, he did it from the low post. Moments later, he did it again. This time from the left elbow, where he knocked down a fadeaway in Mario Elie face. As the commentators say, thanks to those shots, Jordan could score whenever he wanted. Neither they nor I had ever seen anything like it. Michael was on fire, and he was asking for the ball in absurd situations. On this play, he receives a pass between three Rockets players, only to use his footwork to get a bank shot, crossing between the Houston skyline. The Bulls were moving the ball constantly on offense, sharing the rock on every trip. But somehow, the ball always ended up in Jordan's hands. And this time, with two defenders smothering his shot, he was able to knock down the mid-range shot. He was already warmed up, and that could only mean one thing. Houston, we have a problem. To keep up with Michael's great performance, the Rockets were forced to drain absurd shots, like this three-pointer by Clyde Drexler, which looks like it came out of a current NBA game. Or like this midi from Hakeem, who had run out of options and couldn't dribble. But none of that mattered, because right after that, Michael responded with a fadeaway in Sam Mack's face. Houston was rotating defenders to see if anyone could slow Michael down that night, but it seemed like an impossible task. The defensive prowess of both teams was making it a crazy back-and-forth game. The teams were making silly mistakes that cost them turnovers, and with fewer possessions, it's much harder to win. Even more so when Hakeem was drilling completely absurd threes like this one. But when things were getting out of hand, Michael was there, stealing balls, disrupting the offense, and making the right decisions in transition. Although his best was yet to come that night, he was already the Bulls' most impactful player in the first half. That said, it wasn't enough. The Rockets led by 3 points, 43-40, when the second quarter clock ran out. Chicago's legacy, the honor of a dynasty that wanted to return to the elite, was at stake, because the Rockets had no intention of taking their foot off the gas. Pippen was the first to break the ice in the third quarter with a three from the top of the key that the Bulls desperately needed. Right after that, he emulated Jordan, receiving the ball at the low post just before knocking down a mid-range shot in the face of Clyde Drexler. But we all know that Michael wouldn't be long in joining the party. Like Scotty, he went for the top of the key three coming off the screen, and he swished it with incredible ease. Meanwhile, on the other side of the court, Hakeem continued to show why he was the best player in the world during Jordan's retirement. The man also knew everything that was at stake in that game, and he continued to demonstrate his dominance from the low post. His fadeaways, although less spectacular than MJ's, were also absolutely lethal. Jordan tried to find those valuable but scarce spaces in the paint from which he could score. On this play, he receives a good entry pass from Rodman, and after a great spin move, he's able to lay the ball in the hoop. Even when he missed, hustlers on the roster like Dennis Rodman were alert to the rebound to get second chance points. But man, Hakeem was doing the impossible that night. Every time he got the ball, it was 2 points for the Rockets. On this play, not even Jordan's defensive help was enough. However, Jordan responded immediately with his own three after an inbounds play in which he was left wide open from the right wing. I mean, the fear that he would impose by driving or cutting to the basket had the Rockets defenders on edge under the basket, and that caused them to make mistakes. Pippen also continued to knock down difficult threes, and the Rockets realized that their defensive game plan had to change. But with Jordan back on the court, everyone knew who the go-to man would be for the rest of the game. He started going to his spots, whether it was the low block or the elbows, to get those difficult shots that were layups for him. This time, Randy Livingston was the victim, as the Rockets defenders kept rotating on MJ. It seemed like no one wanted that responsibility, although honestly, I don't blame them. The Grim Reaper was back, and this time his victim was Mario Elie. Jordan took him back to the left elbow, the spot from which Michael had just scored over Livingston. And again, with another fadeaway going right, he drilled the midi over 3 Rockets defenders. The Bulls saw the lead on the scoreboard grow more and more in their favor, so they started to like what they were seeing. They didn't just want to win the game against Houston, they wanted the Rockets players to remember it in the playoffs as well. And with plays like this, they seemed to emulate the Showtime Lakers at times. Even Rodman was getting his buckets, but Jordan's show wasn't over yet. With just 3 minutes left on the clock, he received the ball on a right wing and drained another three-pointer that didn't even touch the rim. But even that wasn't enough for him. He wanted to finish off the Rockets like an executioner. And on the next play, with the Houston players' spirits already in the gutter, he drilled his 4th three-pointer of the night. This time from the top of the key. Yet another dagger that knocked out a 2-time champion team. With that three-pointer, Michael sent them to the grave. Forever. That wasn't the craziest game Jordan had ever played. With 32 points, 6 rebounds, and 7 assists, it was just another spectacular night. Another performance that would be the career game of practically the rest of the league. But against the champions, against the team to beat, Michael Jordan had no problem showing his dominance. He was efficient, effective, and decisive. 3 aspects in which he surpassed the fearsome Rockets offense. That championship did not end up going to the Rockets. They fell in the conference finals to Karl Malone and John Stockton's Utah Jazz, who would become the new kings of the West. Salt Lake City became the basketball capital of the half of the league that aspired to face Michael Jordan in the finals. However, this ambition was in vain, because it's 1997, and there's not a soul who can beat the greatest player of all time. From 1996 to 1998, Michael and his Bulls won 3 more championships in a row, cementing his status as the GOAT. His total number of rings rose to 6, a figure that no superstar has been able to match since. And his legacy rose to infinity, as the face of a dynasty that had changed the history of the sport. That's why that regular season game against the Rockets, even with everything it meant, was just another regular season game for him. Nobody else in the league was able to do the same. So here's the real question. If Michael Jordan never stepped away from the game in 1994, would the Rockets still be back-to-back champs? Would Hakeem still have had his moment? Or would the Bulls have gone 8 for 8 and closed the chapter on the entire league? Some say Hakeem was the only one who could truly match Jordan. Others say this was the finals we were robbed of. You tell us, who wins that matchup? Bulls versus Rockets, MJ versus the Dream. Drop your pick in the comments. We'd love to hear your story. If you live for legendary breakdowns, epic rivalries, and the moments that made basketball history, subscribe to First5 Hoops and join a community of real basketball fans. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to stay updated with all our latest content. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.